Welcome to Athletes and Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into other resources related to finances and career and health. But the show is all about athletes transitioning out of sports. It's such a big issue today, whether it's financial literacy, mental health, and we want to make a difference. So we interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their successful transition out into business leadership and entrepreneurship. And the whole idea is to teach and inspire athletes that there is, in fact, life after sports. So excited today to have Todd Stephens on with us. How you doing, Todd?
Good, good. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great, thanks, and a happy New Year to everybody as we're on the new year of Athletes Entrepreneur Alumni Journey. So Todd was a baseball player at Indiana State. And then when he finished his college baseball career, he got into medical device sales with Stryker. Ultimately, he is the founder and CEO of Titan Bats, which we're going to hear a lot more about. And then he also is a partner in exciting Droplight Ventures, and he'll get a little bit into that as well. So, Todd, I always talk about playing sports growing up. How did that shape you leading up into college?
I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and just I just remember being competitive, playing sports in the side yard to begin with, and it was all day. But I played three sports in high school: baseball, basketball, and football. It was everything. It was my life. It's how I like defined myself being on a field somewhere. I think that the biggest thing is just the competitive side of it. Honestly, learning to lose, not accept it, but lose and pick yourself up and go at it again the next day. So I think there's so many things that I take from those experiences that I utilize in business, and whether it's competing against somebody else or just at the end of the day competing against yourself to keep getting better, keep learning and improving. So I always go back and lean on those experiences from my childhood for sure.
Yeah, that's great, and I think that's a good lesson to athletes too. Is that we'll talk more about it, but it's that skill set, the DNA that that competitiveness that you've got so much to offer when you are done with the game, and
Right.
I think people need to understand that. You brought those up there. So let's talk about transitioning out of sports. When you were in school, was there any type of educational? And I don't mean just like a 1 day workshop, but did people talk about that at all?
No, I mean, you kind of needed to determine your major or what you were interested in and what your passion was. I think at too young of an age because you really don't know. But no, there really wasn't much of a transition to me. It was more networking with either former alumni. Like for us back in the day, I mean, it's been since 1997, 98, but you had to kind of do that research on your own. I felt like colleges now, you would probably agree, are better at that for athletes, but certainly connecting, the first start was connecting with former athletes from your university, find out what business they're in and how you could somehow integrate yourself into that. I didn't learn about medical devices in college. I learned about it after college, about a year or two after college, networking, talking to other former athletes. And one guy said he sold hips and knees and went into the operating room. And I was like, really? Is that a thing? Like you can do that? And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, it's really good money. And I had a passion for anatomy, physiology, and I'd watch surgery channels, and for some reason that stuck in my brain. And I'm like, wow, there's a way I can like make money at this without being a surgeon, without being a physician. So yeah, I would say it's the networking side of just reconnecting with former alumni is huge.
Yeah, and I agree. And I mean, I think, and that's something that should be taught. And you're right. I think now, schools are paying more attention to, and it's just like we've talked about, we've got different partners and we talked about going into schools, athletic departments and helping to partner with them and develop additional curriculum, not only for the current athletes, but for the alumni athletes as well. Because again, that's the big issue is that, especially if they didn't have that education, now all of a sudden they're done with their sport. If they're fortunate enough to play professionally, it might be a short career and
Sure.
then they just don't know what to do. And so you bring up a great point about networking, connecting, which is so important. Talk about, because you kind of alluded to it there, but talk about the importance of doing while you're still playing.
I'm sorry, do it networking while you're still playing.
Networking, connecting while you're still playing your sport.
Yeah, no, I think it's again, I always say I don't know who the saying was from, but never being mean to the nerd or the super smart kid. You know what I mean? And I work for that guy now from middle school, but always they always say have your antenna up, whether it's on a plane or wherever you are, you're traveling or asking questions. And I mean, it's so important to like to network in that way to understand what people do. I think in college, I guess because I deal with my son. He's a sophomore playing lacrosse, and I try to get on him about networking and asking more questions. And it's almost like they're not really ready yet. Like they're too focused on school and their sport um, to really dive into that networking side. But it is super critical. It's super crucial, like especially in the summers. The challenge with us in playing baseball is you never had time during the year to have a job. And in your summers, we'd play wood bat leagues in New York. So your environment is who your network is, and you just got to ask questions.
Yeah, and that's key because I think even like I had some conversation with some college students, same thing, freshman, sophomore athletes, and they said they really wish they would know more about networking, connecting. I mean, because you think back even like to high school when you've got your teammates and you got their parents, you just never know who you're going to meet, and I think it's like you said, just having the antennas up and being open to just talking to people and getting to know them. And that, along the way, the biggest key I think is building those relationships so that in that
Right.
future you've got that.
Well, and I think it's important for for athletes to ask other athletes what their parents do. For example, Blake has had a couple of his teammates reach out to me because they're looking for internships, and they wouldn't have known unless they asked Blake, like, "Hey, what's your dad do?" He owns a bat company, and he's involved with this company and several other things going on. So just by asking those questions and getting to know your teammates and what their family does, what their parents do, that's a direct connect. And I'll pick up the phone every single time that one of Blake's teammates or somebody wants to call to ask about the company and how do they get involved or can they do an internship.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm.
It's key to do that. Even the other thing that we always talk about is just being open to helping others. Just that don't always go into networking with just like, hey, how can you help me out? But like really like maybe what I can do. And I've had this conversation so much where people are like, okay, well, there's this multimillionaire, and like, what am I going to do to help that person out? Well, maybe you're helping their kids out, or maybe there's something that they need. So it's fostering that giving mindset. I think is really important in networking.
Yeah, I think the rewarding thing as an owner, whoever you are, and you're successful in business is that these kids, these college kids or whoever, they're intuitive. They're asking questions. Like they want to learn, they want to know more. It's not what can I do for them?
Right.
It's more you're being inquisitive and you're asking questions. You're really wanting to learn about the company, the insides and outs, or want to come visit the facility to see how things operate.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, be a sponge, right? That's the
Yeah,
bottom
be a
line.
sponge. Be a
Yeah.
sponge.
So let's switch gears to alumni connections, and obviously for us at Alumni Direct, that's important. But when you were at Indiana State, were the athletes coming back to not just for the golf tournaments and all that, but did they come back at all to work with the athletes there?
No, at Indiana State, which is where I went, they don't have a program like that, which I it's unbelievable they do not. I mean, we'd come back, of course, for different baseball games, alumni events, and things like that. But they'd never set up anything where entrepreneurs or business owners, former business players that are business owners, would come in and talk to the athletes. I've never been asked to do that, but I think that's a fantastic idea. I think most time you'll get pinged on LinkedIn from
Right.
current athletes or players and just trying to reach out. But yeah, nothing organized like that at Indiana State in particular.
Yeah, and I think it's important. And like I've had conversations before with my school, and I went in with a former football player who was a Hall of Fame athlete at school, NFL player for 10 years, and just we said, hey, we want to help, and he's like, tap me in. And they're like, they said they don't do a very good job of mentoring, and I think it's
Yeah.
so important to bring the alumni back, and it's hopefully there's a lesson, and as people listen and on this podcast and watch that, there's more of a movement. I mean, some of the bigger schools they probably do it, but I think there's definitely a need for that alumni reconnection.
Yeah, I mean, I've had certain reach outs on LinkedIn and like people call. I think the tough thing is like I'm dealing with multiple companies and I'm getting calls from someone random that I don't know. Um, that's in-person contact would be probably a lot better. It's a little harder if you don't know that person to really open up about your company and tell them everything that's going on.
Yeah,
So yeah, so I think something organized like that and being in person at your university and having a day where entrepreneurs come in and talk to the athletes and just talk about their path. Like, how did you get to from Indiana State University to where you are today? And everybody's path may be a little bit different, but I think at the end of the day, even at my level at this point, I never stop networking. I never stop surrounding myself with people that are more influential, smarter than I am, that know other things than, outside of my expertise.
Yeah, that's so important. It's just surrounding yourself with good people, always being able to tap into that, and that's great advice for these students and just anybody in general. So here's all the fun questions I like to ask. So
Yeah.
not sure if you got to watch any of the previous podcasts or listen to them, but the first question is 10 words or less. What advice would you give to freshman Todd?
So
To
freshman
freshman
athletes.
Todd, no, freshman Todd.
Oh, freshman Todd. Oh,
Yeah, we're going back to the future, man. We're getting in that, we're getting in the vehicle there. And what
I would
advice would you give to
say I
yourself?
would say freshman Todd probably thought he knew it all. I would say just be, because you're going in as an athlete and you're so competitive. I would say just these are way more than 10 words. I'm like thinking through my mind here, but be more open to ideas and suggestions and ask more questions.
Okay, yeah, I think we consolidated that down. We'll hit that part right there. So now fast forward to senior Todd. What advice would you give the senior Todd?
Senior Todd in college, I would say it's not all about baseball. Like really focus in on your network and what's next, and start to focus on what your passion is, like in industry and business.
That's great advice right there. So now, like looking at when you transitioned out of sport, I mean, some stories you hear, just it sounds like yours was probably was you kind of had a game plan, but a lot of these athletes do seem to struggle. I mean, how did it work out for you, and what advice would you give to athletes?
Yeah, I mean, I again, even throughout college, I think your mind shifts, your thought process of what you want to be can shift from your freshman year to senior year. And mine even shifted from senior year to 2 years out of college because I thought I was going to go into physical therapy. I loved, anatomy, physiology, and biomechanics and all these things. But then I found and discovered through asking questions, networking, talking to people that there's this greater thing that fits me, and that's medical devices. So, and it was the perfect arena for me. It allowed me to keep my competitiveness, challenge myself against other sales reps on the team. You have a quota, like all the things that we dealt with in athletics, competing at a high level. It was all there in the med device space for me.
And I think that's probably the case, right? A lot within sales in general, right? It seems to be a good area
Yeah,
for athletes to go into when they're done.
yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about I mentioned before briefly like the athlete DNA, the skill set. So as a CEO of a company and just a different company involved, what kinds of I guess skills are you looking for that I mean you mentioned some already, but like looking for where athletes can really make a difference?
Yeah, I think I always go back to this, but you can throw money at anything, and it's not just about the money. Like it takes money to grow a business and to get things up and running, but having passion about something, like I'll invest in passion. You have a passion about something, a certain category, or whatever it might be, or whatever you decide to engage in, you're super passionate about it. That'll allow you to overcome any of the obstacles that come your way. Because no matter what you do, there's going to be issues and things that you don't foresee. But I always say passion, grit, and then competitive drive. Those are the three things I like really want to dive into. And if I like to have experiences for each one, like people tell me like what their experience is, or tell me about a time when this was a situation, but I can work with that. I can't find somebody's passion for them. I can help them, find their lane within whatever that is, the company, and but you got to have that personal grit, that personal passion, and competitive drive just never goes away. Like it is what it is. You hold yourself accountable with competitive drive. And I think that's a challenge with a lot of younger people I interview now is just holding yourself accountable. Like be accountable to yourself first and then to me and our company.
Yeah, and I mean it's so important for that they do have that in them. I mean they've been playing sports since they've been young. A lot of them are captains, or I mean not captains, but they're leaders on their teams,
Yeah.
and they definitely need to utilize that to get into that. And I guess that's kind of going a step further. Just talking about entrepreneurship is that talk about why that's a good fit for athletes.
Again, I think there's a lot of I've done both sides. I've been with Fortune 500 companies, I've been with startups, And again, I think the entrepreneur side is it's an absolute grind. It's not easy. It takes money, and it takes those three things that I just told you: money, passion, grit, and competitive drive. Because I don't care how cool or awesome your business plan is that you learned in college, it will vary, and there'll be contingencies, and there'll be curveballs, and there'll be things thrown at you never expected. And if you don't have that passion for what you're doing, you'll give up on it. So that passion for what you're doing allows you to. There's always a way. That competitive drive, what it does for you is that any issues come my way and tighten back company, which has been several. My attitude is I will find a way. Like there's a solution to everything, and I'll find a way. And again, that's not always money. That's just finding the solution, grinding it out, finding what works.
Yeah, no, it's being a fellow entrepreneur. I see that for sure.
Yeah.
Look, you don't talk about this in all the episodes, but just kind of getting your thoughts because it's just a lot going on in the world of NIL, and just positive and negative. Getting your thoughts. I mean, I know when you were playing, same thing with me. That NIL wasn't around. It was more probably boosters and stuff. But
Right.
talk about your thoughts on NIL in the current landscape.
Wow. So I don't totally agree with it. I mean, there's a side of me that, yes, a lot of these universities are making a ton of money on athletes, so there should be a piece to athletes, but I think it's way out of control. I think paying quarterbacks $2 million a year, and then they flip and go somewhere else the next year for more money. I just feel like again, it comes back to that passion for playing. Like, how much do you need? Um, I just wish they put parameters on it, and like really tried to contain it. Because look, 5 grand to you and I back in college was a lot of money. Like, I would have felt like I was super rich with $5,000 playing baseball. I was given a scholarship, 60% scholarship in education. I had all my meals and everything paid for, and we thought we were living. But so I don't know if I have an answer, and I feel like there's probably a lot smarter people out there that maybe have a better solution to it. I do think athletes should have a piece of it, but I think it needs to be contained and controlled.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, like you mentioned that, like the athletes getting paid 2 million. I think a lot of it, for the general public, that's kind of the perception, just seeing all the big stuff going on. I guess the flip side is there are opportunities when you start some of the female women's sports
Yeah,
and some of the other like the non not football, basketball, baseball type things. These other sports where athletes are having an opportunity to, in a sense, become entrepreneurs where they've got
right,
opportunities or sponsorships and all. And I think that's the lane that, that hopefully people will try to make it bigger and better as far as NIL goes. Cause you're right. I mean, it's the guidelines, the guardrails, as a lot of people say that they're not there. And I think the biggest issue that I see is the lack of education. And I think
right,
it's probably getting better, but just guess what? You have to pay taxes and you got to build, maybe start an LLC. And there's things that
right.
people need to do.
Right. And I'm not against NIL. I think it just there's a place for it because as an athlete, you're spending 40 plus hours a week on that particular program, that particular sport, where there's study tables and weight training and everything. So you don't have time to have a job as an athlete in college. So yes, I believe it should be a part of it. I just think there need to be parameters, and because yes, if they are teaching you to manage your money now that you have it and understanding how to build wealth, sure. But are they
Yeah.
doing that? I'm not sure if they're doing that with all
No,
these athletes.
no, I mean, and I think it's something that's going to come down to more of a push from whether it's the government, the NCAA, schools to try to put in more education based around it, which I think will certainly help out
Right.
to all that. And so,
I mean, look, I would have much rather like learned entrepreneurship, building wealth, trading stocks, calls and puts than algebra 2 or calculus.
I'm with you on that too. Yeah, yeah. Get me into the real life stuff there where I can look
Yeah.
at that stuff. So, all right. So let's talk about you got into you're in medical device sales all these years, but then you wanted to get into entrepreneurship, and you started Titan Bat, which obviously passionate about baseball. Talk a little bit about how you got started with that, and then tell us how it's led up to what you're doing today with Titan Bats.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So one of my startup companies I was with, we were acquired, and I had some extra money to look into somewhere to invest it. And it just so happened that a good friend of mine from my from Logansport, where I grew up. I was a youth pastor, and my mother brought me a newspaper article that says youth pastor in Logansport making baseball bats. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. I didn't know that. And come to find out, I went to meet with him to really help him, just help him network and help him get his product out there. I really, at the time, didn't want to invest in a bat company. I didn't know anything about making them. Um, but I saw his passion. He was making them on a little hand lathe with all the woodworking tools. His grandfather taught him how to make a few bats, and I was like, man, I see his passion for doing this. I don't want to necessarily make them, but I'm going to invest in this guy because I think this can go somewhere. So from there, I had to figure out what a CNC lathe was, what a semi-auto copy lathe was, lacquer, paint, logos. Had to figure all of it out because I had no idea. But I knew we had the passion, and I had passion for baseball and business. And it was kind of a perfect combination for us to get up and going. And we did all this for probably 7 years out of his garage. And then eventually we expanded and we were running out of room. And so that's when I brought on a couple other investors. We got into a bigger 14,000 square foot facility back in 19, and we've just continued to grow from there. So we've added batting cages. We've got 6 trainers, softball and baseball. We're getting ready to add a weight room in our office space we're tearing out. So we'll have all that self-contained in the same place where we manufacture bats.
So would that be bringing people in from other parts of the country, or is it pretty much focused in your area as far as just, using the cages and trying the bats out and stuff like that?
It's focused in our area, but it's amazing how in our area, a lot of people drive 2.5 hours from small towns up north to Indianapolis too, because we have multitude of indoor facilities down here. But up in the small town areas of Logansport and surrounding areas, like they don't have access to that. A lot of people don't have access. So it's probably a 30 to 50 mile square radius of people that come in to train or work out with a qualified high end trainer, whether it's pitching, hitting, or anything like that. So, but yeah, eventually, as we're MLB certified, we're going through that currently. We would fly guys in, bring them up to our facility, and they could be a part of the bat making process and test them out in our cages, go back in, make some modifications, and really make it a boutique kind of bat making process.
No, that's really interesting. I mean, do you see a point of time where you might expand, not the manufacturing side of things, but expand out to, because I was real involved in travel baseball for many years. And, being in Florida, most of you don't have to really worry about the weather, but they do have there were some indoor cages and stuff
Yeah.
and, training and stuff like that. I mean, is that something that you see, especially with that entrepreneurial mind of yours? Like you see that expansion from the batting cage side?
Yeah, I don't think we want to expand the batting cage. We want to self-contain that within our facility to really utilize that with the pro guys, make it a special experience of coming in and you know, picking out their bat model and testing it out and coming back in and making modifications. But yeah, I think that business will do well on its own, and I don't have any desires to expand the batting cage side of it. There's so many out there, and
Yeah.
that's super competitive space with people that have way more money than I do.
So what now on the bats? What makes them special?
So we get all of our stuff from Leather Stocking Billet Company. Like when I stepped into this and I was like, I'm gonna put my own money into a company, like I want the best product and it's number one. So we switched out from a current wood supplier we're using, and I went to a group that supplied a lot of Major League Bat companies. And the difference is they hand split their trees instead of run them through a sawmill. And if the grain's a little bit off in a sawmill, it would basically cut right through it and you wouldn't run with the grain. So they hand split them. The grain's more true, and that's crucial in the handle. The most crucial part is that little spot in the handle, like 20 inches of the handle, that the grain has to be almost perfect. So the quality, we've never changed the quality from the day I started from 2013 to now. So it's always been that MLB quality wood and ash, maple, and birch. We do a special lacquer to harden up kind of the bat, and then we just specialize in, you can do your signature on the bat, you can do logos. We do award bats for different companies, and you put your logos on it, your quota, your stats, your sales numbers. So yeah, we do a few different unique things.
That's cool. Yeah, like the specialty type promo type item. I like that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so the gamer bat is one silo, and then we have, the award bats silo, and then we have training bats, different type of training bats that are used.
Is there any more movement towards wood bats at the younger age? Because it just seems like, I mean, I remember from travel, everything went aluminum or some type of, titanium, whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to see more and more like U11, U2 like wood bat tournaments, which
Okay.
is great because that's going to really test you as a hitter and it's going to tell you whether you can hit or not. Composite, you have a whole barrel you can hit a line drive, hit it off the logo, and it's a line drive over the shortstop, right? Whereas a wood bat, you have 6 inches that on the barrel that if you hit it there, it's going to feel solid like composite. But if you're off the end or toward the logo, you're going to snap it in half. And I think it's just an amazing training tool for younger ages. The earlier you can get a wood bat in your hands and train with it, it's even better. And I've seen where junior colleges, getting back to wood bats, junior colleges, I just gave 4 bats to a kid that plays at Eastern Arizona, and their whole league in Arizona for JUCO is wood bat league. So you're starting to see a shift in the junior college level to all wood bat. Um, but I don't think high schools ever will. I think it wouldn't be cost effective
Right. Yeah, a lot of
because
broken bats.
you see it in collegiate wood bat leagues, the number of bats that go through, 150 or 200 in a summer, believe it or not. Some guys
Wow.
can get through a whole summer with 1 bat, but a lot of kids are inexperienced with bats, and then now your pitchers are pitching to break your bat, which is
Right.
an advantage to the pitcher, right? So yeah, I don't know that collegiate ball will ever go fully wood bat or high schools, but maybe there's been some ideas of a carbon fiber handle with a wood bat feel barrel, like connected. Um, but yeah, we'll see. There's some different ideas we have.
And so how do people find Titan?
Just go on to titanbats.com at titanbats1 Instagram and Twitter, just titanbatcompany.com. You'll be able to find us.
Okay, great. And anything you'd like to add, it's as there about Droplight Ventures and some of the things you're doing there?
No, it's just super exciting. I love building companies, jumping into dumpster fires, so to speak, or whether starting up from the ground up or jumping in and just figuring out where you can add value and bringing your network of people into that mix to provide value to that company.
Okay, great. And how can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, just
Okay.
Todd Stephens on LinkedIn. Most of my stuff is through Titan Bats or Cold Plunge Studios or some of the other companies. But if you're passionate, you can find me.
There you go. And he will give you advice. He told you that. Like he's not going to blow you off. So you definitely need to
Yeah.
reach out to Todd. And you can find us at alumnidirect.com. The podcast is on our YouTube channel as well as across all the podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, and be sure to subscribe and follow the show. There's every week we just have such great advice, and I always call them the nuggets. And Todd gave some great advice today, and I think it's there's a lot that we could do to help athletes that are struggling. And I think just encourage them to reach out. We always say, if we help at least one, but obviously want to help a lot more. So, Todd, again, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure.